Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Stephen and Oliver Show. But you'll notice this is the first time it's not just the two of us. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Gemma Crane from MindsetHR. And I'm going to ask Gemma to just talk a little bit about her company, her interest in mindset specifically as well. And then we've got some questions, not aimed at tripping Gemma up, but she's only just seen them. So we want to get her sort of immediate response to that as well. But Gemma, just tell us a little bit about yourself, Mindset HR, anything you'd like to share with our audience.
Sure. Okay. So Mindset HR was created nearly 3 years ago, and predominantly was set up to link mindset with the HR, the people element of what we do in business. And it was very much for me being on a journey of personal growth myself and becoming an NLP practitioner and a life coach, and of course working with the amazing Bob Proctor over in Toronto. So really wanted to bring that back into business and support business owners with people, strategies, and how that mindset can enhance that.
Awesome. Yeah, great. And as you can probably tell, this is why we've picked Gemma. There's probably a few people you could maybe think of with human resources, but when we've spoken, Stephen and I, it's just obviously Gemma, because you come at it from such a different angle. And one of the things that the first question, I'll go first. The first question I've got for you is, what happens when you get culture right? Now, that's the open question, but the underlying thing is we're trying to stay positive here. A lot of companies aren't getting this right at the moment. And you must be experiencing this quite a lot, and you must share some of the frustrations we have with companies that we're not working with so much, and probably early days with the ones that we do work with. But ultimately, what is the benefit of getting culture right that you see in
what
your
happens
business?
when you get culture right is, I guess, predominantly it's about how people feel rather than how they view things. So that could be clients, customers coming into your business, and how they can feel the atmosphere of how the employees feel.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's all about emotional intelligence, actually, and how getting that right from a customer and operational and employee balance can really make such a difference in terms of profit, turnover, and getting those employees to remain in the business as employees.
Yeah, no, I love that, Stephen. What's your first take from that?
Yeah, I want to ask a question first.
Sure.
Because some people have the title of HR directors, and some people now have the title of people directors. What do you prefer? Because HR just sounds really old and stuffy to me. It's just
Do you know what? It's so interesting you say that, because when I set up the business, I didn't want bloody HR in the name. But I thought, what do I say that people are going to know what we do? It was really tough. But I absolutely agree. I think HR is a bit old hat. I think it's done its time, a little bit like back in the day personnel had kind of done its day. And I think HR's kind of a little bit like that. I think people director's good, and I think it does what it says on the tin. It takes away that kind of theory model basis of, you know, what HR is used to be about and what it is about. And I think it's a little bit more relatable.
Yeah. And I guess that leads on to the first thing that was going through my head was, I always think there's two types of HR people or people manager people. The ones that are very kind of what I call, it's all about kind of statistics, data, very compliant. And then you get the ones that are really commercial, right? I know what category I think you sit in, but, you know, talk to me about when you get that bit wrong, the balance wrong of the compliance and the commerciality, what can happen when you don't get that balance right?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think for me, again, it's that level of emotional intelligence has to really play a part. So it's that empathetic leadership. It's about being pragmatic. And I think you see many HR professionals, people professionals, if we want to go that route, that are very much a stickler to the rules. And I think having so many years experience in HR, yes, you have to stick to the rules, but sometimes there are a better way to go about dealing with certain situations. And I would always say that it's not about the process that you're looking to get the outcome, the result with. It's much more about how you navigate that process. And that really for us is the most important part. You can have, you know, a beginning and an end, two different people directors looking at that process. It could be the same process, but the way in which that's conducted and followed through can have a very different outcome on the emotion of those individuals.
Yeah. And I guess we're talking about people, right?
Yeah.
So emotion just comes into it, doesn't it?
Of course it
so
does.
it's not what we often say, it's not about what you say and even how you say it. It's about how you leave them feeling about what you've said and how you've said it. Right?
That is so true. Yeah. That's so true. And, redundancy processes are an example of that. So that process needs to happen. That's the rationale. That's the proposal of the business. There's reason and justification for doing so. But actually that transparency and that empathy and that emotional connection when you go through that process of offering, how are you?
Yeah.
Do you need additional support? What can we do that's going to make this process better for you?
Yeah.
And asking those questions as you go through, they'll get to the end, they'll go, do you know what? We know that needed to happen. We get it. But actually, we've had a really good journey throughout that whole process. So, that's really important.
And then the last one before I let him get back involved. I know that when you're running a business and you're out there trying to build that business and connect with new clients, the hardest thing is that trust. It comes up time and time again, and me and Oliver talk about it all the time. I know in our perspective business, until you get that, it's very hard to sort of really influence. And so how do you do that in your business? Because from my point of view, growing up within different industries, HR was almost like, they're scary people, right? Like, do I really want to go and talk to them about how I really feel? You know? So how, that trust, how do you do that?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting you've brought this up, actually, because there is a pyramid that I'm using with my business coach at the moment. And that really is around, how do you go out and be different to other HR consultancies, and what does that need to look like? And at the bottom of that pyramid, along the biggest part of that, is trust. And the second layer is openness and transparency, and the third layer is commitment. So for me at the moment, everything that we do has got to fundamentally be qualified around those areas. So trust for me is about knowing that whoever you're working with, they can be really quite candid with you, and they can be themselves. They can be vulnerable, they can be authentic, and they can ring you up at any time of the day or night, because I do get that as well, and really tell you how they feel, and then be able to get a real honest and transparent conversation back. You can offer some challenge in the right way, but also offer them comfort and support, knowing that you've got their back and you will absolutely make the right decision. And what I would say is values is really important within that. So we only work with clients that have the same values as us. We've said no to some clients because they don't offer those same or similar values. It's a two-way relationship. So if we would be asking something of our clients, it needs to be reciprocal. We need to have some of that information back to be able to deliver what we need to strategically or transactionally. So if they're not giving us that back, it's a real challenge. And actually, that then makes our job a lot harder. So for us, our values have to be there at the beginning. And then that building trust is very much around, linking them in with everything that you do, aligning them to community, collaboration, positivity, all of those values that we have, and bringing them into the business community and sharing what happens with MindsetHR. And you get in a room, we've got one coming up in April, you get in a room with a bunch of clients, and everybody pretty much says the same thing about us within a few words, but actually, they are quite aligned, which is lovely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I've got a sort of couple of questions that are sort of linked. So one of the things that certainly I find I've quite a few ding dongs online about this, to be fair, is the whole.
You're not going to go to a rant on.
No, I'm going to let Gemma answer this, so I'll be very quick. So the first one is around performance reviews, or the old-fashioned appraisals, and how do you do them well? And I'm still coming across people who might sit down with their staff once, twice if we're lucky, a year, and consider that that's an effective way of performance reviewing or running appraisals or whatever you want to call it. So my first question is, how do you make performance reviews, performance management engaging for the people that actually matter, which is the staff? Where do you sit on appraisals, performance reviews, and the like?
Yeah, firstly, we tend to use the word team, not staff. That's really important.
Cool.
But I would say it's about building a framework from the ground up. So, what do the staff team wish to have as part of their framework? And having those discussions, because actually that could look very differently across the board. And not knowing that, then, you're not going to know where to start. The other thing to consider is your values again. Yep. So we've just done some work with a client. We've got them through Investors and People. We are now working with values that we've created and helped them engage within, and that will then resonate through everything that they do within the organisation. So that will underpin every single performance review, every single recruitment, the strategy, candidates, competencies, everything that they deliver on. So that's really important. And I think for me, it's about an 80-20 conversation. So as the line manager, you need to be doing less of the talking. Yeah. You need to be asking those open questions to get those conversations going. And that's what it generally is. It's a conversation. And what we suggest that clients look at is calling it something different, because what we know with language is it can be associated with something else. You were saying earlier about the association of the stigma attached to HR. Yep. Call it something different. We've got going for gold, going for green, coffee and catch up, whatever that looks like. Call it something different, because it'll excite people to come and see you. And what we do know is that particularly the newer generation coming through, not interested in pay reviews. They're not interested in some of the other things that may have been of interest. But what they are interested in now is having a conversation with their line manager, being listened to, having a voice, and having some empathy around that from their manager or leader, and being able to, share ideas, innovation, offer something of value to the organisation that may have been thought through. And just really understanding how those values then fit with that individual is really important, so that they feel connected. And again, it's the emotional intelligence part of that.
There's a thing I love, because I have a follow-up question linked to this, but ultimately the thing that I love that I'm hearing about this, and again, this is why you're such a good guest to bring on to hear, is you are pointing out to employers that their team, their staff, their employees, whatever they want to call them, they are important and what they think matters, and they should be leading the conversation around everything. Yeah. Not having it all prescribed to them, which is really, really refreshing, because actually I feel that is still something that's quite a long way off for so many companies, so many organisations. And I don't think it comes from a malicious place or an arrogant place. It's that classic, that's how we've always done it.
Yeah, I think there's an element of change there as well. And, it's like anything in life. I'm an obsessive personal growth development person. I'm doing personal growth time and time again. If you've been in business for 25 years, that looks very different to what it looks like now. And if you've not done anything from 25 years to now, you're not going to know. You don't know what you don't know, right? We know that. So it's really important that what they do is maybe outsource. They use the likes of you guys and ourselves to be able to leverage that delegation element, to be able to say, do you know what, we haven't got a clue what we're doing here, guys. We need you in to help. We need you to come in and offer some of that coaching, development, strategic, commercial acumen to be able to support what needs to happen moving forward. So yeah, I think it's important. Change needs to happen. But
perfect. I mean, it's almost like you knew what was coming next, but this just shows it's well-planned questioning, doesn't it, to be fair, Stephen? So I'll let you have the next one. You're not having this one. So what I really want to know is, people talk about well-being in the workplace, but I want to know really not so much what is that, but in your view, who should lead that? So, with what you've just said, I think we know where we might be heading here, but when we talk about well-being in the workplace, where does that sit? Who should be responsible for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably middle management level initially to instigate those conversations for sure. But again, it's very much about getting the engagement from the team. Wellbeing surveys are great. So if you're going in completely cold and you don't know, wellbeing surveys are a great place to start. And then looking and analysing that data. Again, communicate. There just seems to be this wall that is created in business where, well, I'm a manager or I'm a director, let's not talk to our staff or team. So it's important, go and speak to your team, find out what is actually going on and how they feel and what do they constitute as well-being, because my well-being is probably really different to your well-being and so on. So it's about identifying each of those areas of well-being and then seeing, what is it that the business can support with, what is it that needs to be outsourced, what is the training budget, and start chipping away at what does that look like.
So I can almost see the faces of some people listening to this, knowing that they would never admit this, but let's see if we can answer this question now. So what if you don't think you're going to like what you're going to hear from those well-being surveys initially? Because that's probably going to be the case for a large number of businesses if they haven't. How would you calm that person down, bring them off the ceiling, help them take that plunge, be brave and do it? I can speak specifically of a client of mine who will not do it, and I know they won't do it because I know they don't want to hear what's coming. So has that something you've come across? And if
so we worked with a client, gave us the go ahead to go in and hold one-to-ones with all of the team members, and it was a little bit like an in-between of an engagement survey cross 360. So we went in, we did what they call stay interviews with all of the staff and the team, and it was interesting. There was some trends, there were some very clear indicators of certain personalities within the business, but coming back to the results of that, we got the findings together, went back into the room and asked the individual, in particular the managing director, if it would be okay to give the feedback. And of course, he was the, instigator of this method. So he is like, yes, of course. And, it was an interesting one because actually most of it was aimed at him. And
often it is.
It was. And, it's a tough listen. But, we always position it. How does that make you feel? Are you okay to continue? Would you like to take a break? We're aware that some of these things can really trigger quite, some people quite hard. But what we then say is it's not about what that now looks like. That's the past. And from today, let's draw a line in the sand. And what can we do moving forward to make those things different next time we come in? And once you've kind of got that out of the way, then you can start building on more of the positive stuff and working through, what does that mean? What's the perception of that? Because perception is a really powerful thing and comes into business a lot, but isn't very much spoken about. So perception is a big thing that we talk about. And actually, where does that come from? Why do you view it that way? What has led you to view it that way? How do you feel about that? Having those conversations you can then understand each other's perception. So coming up with the findings, going through the actions, and then start chipping away at a different outlook. So yeah,
lovely. I love a word. Perception. That's a new one I'm taking with me. I'm sorry, I'm stealing that.
Yeah, it's one of the intellectual factors.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's a good one. Right, I think I've rabbited on enough. I'll segue over to you. Stephen.
I'm
Where's your mind at?
My mind's like, all I can see is like your logo, like the bat signal. So like when they want to call Batman, they shine the light, right? And Batman comes. And what that leads, there is a question here. The question that it leads me to is, what kind of phone calls do you get? Do you get the phone call when they're like on their knees, and they're literally like, help? Or is the phone call more kind of like proactive, where they've gone, you know what, we're thinking about doing some things next year. We're gonna plan early.
I like
so
those
let's
calls,
go and talk to Gemma. Talk about those phone calls. Which one is it?
Oh, do you know what? I would love to say it's the proactive stuff, and we get them, of course we do. But actually, where we find we have the proactive is when we start working on our subscription. Because they often don't think they need us. But then when we do a health check and we go in and we do an audit, we do the findings report, they then look at it and go, oh, wow, we had no idea. Then we'll get in, we'll start building relationships. We do an introduction to the team, we do a presentation, we take some food in, really get to know their team in the organisation. And then we will start building relationships and they'll start to trust us. When they start to trust us, they will then help allow us to kind of work through those findings. But yeah, I think the reactive stuff is definitely the catalyst. And what's really interesting with the reactive work that we do, I had a phone call, when was it? Friday evening, quite late. And it came through on the landline, and I took it, and she went, "Do you know what?" She said, I've Googled HR consultancies Norfolk. You were the third one that came up on Google, but you're the only one that's answered the phone. So thank you, because I really need your help. And it was a reactive situation. And, they'd been in this position for quite some time. Their fingers had been burnt previously with regards to tribunal, and they didn't quite know how to deal with this situation. So often we'll deal with the reactive. We calm the situation. We take the emotion out of it. We look at the process and look at the options of what's available for them, and talk that through, clear the head, clear the muggle, get all of that rubbish out, and then we can then set a plan in place. Then what happens is, once we've set that plan in place, is they'll be like, wow, we need to continue working. So we then get a subscription, of which we can then start the proactivity stuff happening. So it is a bit of a back to front way.
But it's almost like the reactive is like the panic phone call.
Yeah.
And then what you have to do is like
the shit hits the fan,
steady that
basically.
storm, and then you can be proactive after you've steadied the storm.
Yeah.
What would your advice be? Because this is really important. The reason why I wanted you to answer the question is because I want the listeners to understand, if you can be proactive, first up, what are the benefits from being proactive, from really looking at it as a much more longer term? It's
just the value that is added, and it's so difficult. And we always have this conversation as HR professionals, is that it's so difficult to put the value on what we do sometimes, because it varies from business to business. But what I would say is the cost of going to tribunal and the cost of being sued, employee liability, or whether it's an unfair dismissal or not following a process. And I always say to business owners, it's not about what you do, it's about how you do it, that process again. And that's where the compliance piece comes in, where we are careful. But ultimately, that cost in tribunal is far greater than a fraction of what we charge on a yearly subscription. I always say, do you have health insurance? And they're like, yes. Do you have business insurance? So what would be the impact if you now, had a claim on your business insurance? Well, that's no different to us. If you haven't got us, that's going to be the cost to your business, and that's going to be far greater than what we charge. If you had an HR director, people director in the business, you're looking this way, particularly Norfolk, you're looking between 50, 60, 65 K a year. We don't charge a fraction of that, and they get everything. They're getting HR director, people director level consultants. They get administrators that they can bounce off. They get collaboration events. They get business community. They get free leads. They've got a referral scheme. They can reduce their packages every year by working with us. They build trust and relationships. They can have impartial conversations with us. We can be their board member. We can battle between two directors if we need to. We can challenge where we need to without feeling we're going to lose our job. And we've worked with HR departments as well to go in and support the stuff that they can't deliver on, to make them look better in board meetings. It really is a sort of a one size fits all. We do health and safety, we do payroll now. We've got HR systems, we've got recruitment systems. We're now launching a recruitment arm and a training and development arm for the business as well. So we are literally that one-stop shop. So it is just whatever they need, they can pull upon whenever it's needed.
What would you say, with all that said then, what would you say are the top 3 things that, in your opinion, SMEs need to be mindful of right now?
Oh, good question. So for me, I think you probably know the employment bill and the changes. We have literally got the biggest employment bill change in 50 years.
Wow.
Like, that is huge. I wasn't even around, so to have 28 legislation changes in the next 2 years and not have an HR professional like, you need to check your pulse, because I wouldn't want to be doing that as a business owner, the same as I don't want to be my accountant or my marketer or any of those, actually, because I can't do that. I do HR and coaching. You know, would I want to be responsible for that area of my business? Absolutely not. And actually, would I want to be responsible for the fallout and the failings and the unlawful duty that comes out of that? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
That is your number one.
Absolutely number
What
one.
would number two be?
Number two for me would be emotional intelligence. So really understanding people in business is more important than ever at the moment. And, you know, the generation that are coming through absolutely need that. And it's not about salary anymore. It's about understanding who they are as a person, understanding what they do, how they connect, what their passions and loves are, what their drivers are, and really tapping into that. And as business owners, we need to be better at that.
Yeah.
We do need to be better at that. And again, if you don't know how to do that, go and get yourself, you know, a coach and outsource it for people that can help, because you are going to propel your business a lot further forward if you do engage with this work, whereas the ones that don't are going to be left behind.
Yeah. And your last one?
Oh, I would probably say difficult ones. What have I said? Employment, emotional intelligence. Yeah, I would just say the softer skills. You know, the transition between college, universities, into workplace at the moment needs a lot of work. You know, we've been working with and helping and supporting learning skills improvement projects, you know, across Norfolk and Suffolk, and that's very much about what they're looking at. But there's this big archway and gap between what they look like when they come out of college, you know, as a young individual, but the softer skills not there. They're so engrossed in a phone now, those communication skills, the eye contact, you know, again, that emotional intelligence, that empathy, or just understanding people, that for me is a real worry right now.
That's a great one. And actually, I think I would say your third one, we've actually done a podcast on, you know, when you were born and how that affects you.
Oh, yeah, generational divide.
And I think we got to get savvy, right? Otherwise, we ain't going to be stimulating people the right way. We're not going to be inspiring them and motivating them. So it's a biggie. And I'm always saying, you know, if you are in charge of people, or if you're employing people, or you're in any role where people are important to the success of your business, you got to get with the program, right?
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're getting left behind.
You will get left behind. Yeah, there's no two ways about it. And, you know, with AI coming as well, you know, investors of people will categorically be, you know, at the top of that benchmark and framework for proving that they look after culture. You know, you can't just put on your website anymore, we've got a good culture, we've got this, we've got that, we've got values. You know, they have to be felt and they have to be evidenced, and AI will only help with that, because it will see through the mess and the rubbish. You know, you've got to be living and breathing this stuff. You know, people have got to feel it when they walk in, people have got to feel it when they work with you. They've got to have that empathy and human-centric leadership on every level. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. I get quite frustrated when you hear not just business owners, but older generations getting frustrated with young people. But look, whether you're right or wrong, it cannot be discussed now. This is how they're coming in. These people don't want to just work on a job on the front line, doing all the hard graft for not great pay for very long. They want to know that there's a reason behind it. They need purpose, or we're already aware of purpose. Where there's still people now today that I coach, maybe in their 30s, 40s and 50s, who've got no real idea what their purpose is. Well, these young people are coming through, already know it. It might not be where they end up, but they know what they want to do. They know what they want to achieve. And like I saw some article, it's more based around the US, but they were talking about how many jobs a 20-year-old will have had before they turn 30. I mean, they're talking about anywhere from 5 to 15 roles, whereas, you know, so the idea of being lifers and things like that is just not going to happen,
I think it's a bit of a scavenger hunt. And I've certainly said to my son, knowing what I know now, and probably ripping up my whole past life and starting again, I would probably have done, is that use work as a scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
go out and feel your way through.
Yeah.
Like, what do you love? What do you loathe?
Yeah.
Tick off the things you love, write them down,
Yeah.
and then bin the shit that you don't like.
Yeah.
You know, get rid of it,
Absolutely.
and then find a
Absolutely.
job that ticks those boxes. And if it doesn't, keep going, because there will be something that you find that you absolutely love. And of course, there'll be the odd job here and there, you know, the odd task that you might not particularly like. But actually, if we go into organisations and work a recruitment strategy, we look at what do people love, what do they want to do, because actually we know once they're doing love work, they perform
everything.
and they're productive and they're, you know, they're loving life, and they're much more engaged.
Yeah, 100%. No, I absolutely agree. So I'm just conscious, it's been a great episode. We always promise not to make our episodes too long, don't we? So we're coming towards the end. I'm not going to ask any more questions. So Stephen, you get to ask the final question, as long as it includes letting Gemma wrap up with what she'd like to finish on, all right?
I would feel like I've let Gemma down if I didn't ask this question, actually.
Oh, really?
And
gosh.
because I know this question is going to be 2-1, because I know where his standpoint is on it. And that is, it's about purpose, but I know that you have faith like me.
Yes.
And I just have to ask this question because I think it'd be wrong not to ask it. And it's just, you know, how has your faith allowed you to be the Gemma that I now know? Talk to you about that, because I think that's really inspiring. And I think the listeners will, you know, there'll be some listeners that will go, hallelujah, you know, someone's been brave enough to talk about that on a podcast, because it just linked to mindset.
Absolutely.
You're called Mindset HR, and I know that your mindset is where it is because you have faith.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And what I would say is it kind of goes back to that beginning journey for me, and getting rid of those limiting beliefs, getting rid of that lack of self-worth, and I guess feeling like I haven't got to be validated anymore, feeling like I can be me, and that I haven't got to, you know, worry about what other people think of me anymore. I haven't got to, you know, ask them for advice, and I can be who I want to be. And I think, you know, when I did my mindset work many years ago, I'll never forget, you know, the quote when they say, you know, nobody's going to pay your goals, nobody's going to, you know, make those things happen. It's only you. And I was like, you know what? That's so true. I've not done so many things in my life because of the way that others might perceive that. So for me, having faith is about choosing joy, and joy is internal, and joy is in here.
Amen.
It is in here. And, you know, we talk about it at church, and negative is not my normal. And that's our strap line at the moment. We choose joy in everything that we do. Society is, you know, is really struggling at the moment. You know, people are walking around really quite sad. And choosing joy is much more about deep self-love. And once people understand that work is inward, not outward, and that deeper connection is, you know, it's so powerful and it's amazing. And I always say to people, make sure you speak your self.
I love that, Gemma. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It would have been wrong not to ask that question.
Yeah.
Absolutely
No, I
wrong.
love that. I've never been asked that before. So thank you. I love that. It's amazing.
What was the last thing I asked you to ask, Gemma? How would you like to?
Okay, yeah.
Come on, look. Give me the chance to.
Yeah.
He loves his
finish
last
it.
question so much.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
remember?
And how would you like to end this? You know, what would you like to say to the listeners
Oh,
right
gosh.
right now? What would you like to say to them?
Thank you for listening. I think it's really important to say thank you. I'm so grateful for my business community. And I think for those people that know me and really know me, and I had a conversation today actually with a client in one of the offices I was in, and what he was saying was he was very different in work, out of work. I think I'm pretty much the same. You know me deep down. I don't hide anything. I am who I am. I'm quite postured in who I am now. But I just love working with people that have got the same values and want to continue to do that. So I guess, you know, if you're struggling, don't struggle alone. Come and see me. Come and have a chat. It's a free chat. I'm always on the end of the phone, and I always love to pay it forward. So just come and ask for help.
Love that. Perfect. You fit in well here. That is good.
Might have a little sleep.
Yeah, it's cozy, isn't it?
That's lovely.
So there, we will leave it there, guys. I think you can all agree it's a great episode from Gemma. As she's already said, do reach out to her if you've got any questions, any fears. Like we've always said, if we've triggered you, I think Gemma may have triggered some of the businesses listening today. So she's always available. It's not designed to scare. You're there to help.
Here to help.
And awaken.
Absolutely.
Take advantage of that. So I hope everybody's enjoyed the episode. We've really enjoyed recording it, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thank you.